Hi everyone, I recently got a question on what is a function, what is a formula, what is a variable, and when and how would I use all these things. So let's say I'm building a simple form. Now, I'm sure you're looking at this and saying, that looks like it should be inside a repeating section. Ignoring that for a moment because I'll have a very large repeating section video very soon in an upcoming release. Now what we're doing here is we're doing the simple, we're doing price and we're doing quantity, if I can spell, and total. So a simple sort of thing you'd expect in something like an order form or something like that. So what we want to do is when we put in a price and we put in a quantity, we want to know the total in here. So how would we go about calculating this? Well, we'd go to rules. So we come into here, we say calculate total. So I can say if price is filled and quantity is filled, then total is the value is, and you'll notice there's this insert tab. Now the insert tab appears in many different places where you can put logic in, and this is where you get introduced to functions, formulas, and variables. Now you'll see those in the config panel, you see them in rules, you'll see them in many different places because we want our forms to be dynamic. So what we're doing today is we're just trying to figure out what's the price times the quantity, and we want the total value. So we go insert, and here is where we get introduced to formulas, form variables, and a bunch of other things. And this is where we build our logic. So we're really doing a simple form. We're really just doing price times quantity. So we do price times quantity, we press insert, and if the price is not filled and the quantity is not filled, then we're going to set the total to the value of blank. Cool. So we're going to have rule. We go back to designer. I think it looks good. And we go to preview. I say I am going to have 25. I'll probably have the quantity and then the price around the other way, but 25 items. Now the total is still 0. I'm going to order 4 of them, and that's a total of $100. Now, what we just covered off was a rule, which had some logic in there, and a formula. So what is this formula? A formula is something that can be used once, and a formula consists of many functions. So these are different functions in here. So let's say we wanted to make sure that it was 2 decimal places. So we can do a round function. So if we look at the round function, decimal value, integer precision. So how many decimal places do we go to? So we're doing a currency calculation. So let's say I put in some really crazy numbers. I need to do a round function to make sure it's rounded to 2 decimal places. So I'm going to put round, my calculation, comma, and 2. So it's 2 decimal places. So what does this mean? Well, this is a formula we're building using a function. The function is the round, which returns a number. So many different functions return different data types. So always keep that in mind when you're using a function. It has different data types. So when you're trying to use, let's say, put a date time control into a boolean, it's going to say that's not the right data type. You've got to convert it to something else. Okay, so we know what functions are. We use functions inside a formula. The formula is something we can use in rules or different places, and it can be used once. So we go on update, and we go on update our rule, and we go to preview. And I'm going to say 231 and something ridiculous. Oh, man, there's an integer. So let's go and change that to a decimal. Now let's go to preview and a whole bunch of those, and there you go. So now it's actually calculated my total with a precision of 2 decimal places. Now that's great, and we actually want to show that person what their total order is. We've got it here, but we might want to say just in a nice format, or we might want it on page 2. Let's do that. Let's put a second page in here. So we're on page 1, order details, plural, and then order confirmation. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to move our order confirmation to the second page, and we'll make our pages horizontal. Now we're just going to change that slightly. We're going to make that left line. Your total order is, we go insert, Now we need that same formula. We need our formula that says price times quantity and around it and so on and so forth. Now a function is single use only, so I can't reuse it here. So if I wanted to do it again, I could come back to here, I could go to here, to go to rules, and I come to here, I can copy this, copy that there, update, and then I go back to, where was I? Designer, yep, that's fine. Order confirmation, your order total is. Now I can't put a function in here, I need to put a variable. If I put a function in here, I would then have two versions of that logic that could be out of sync as well. So we've got a couple of problems there. So let's say order total. Okay, so round, and that's a decimal, so then we need another function to convert it to the right data type. So we go convert, let's just put a line here, convert to string, and so this is what I was saying before around getting it to the right data type. Alright, so we'll go convert to string, we're doing a price times quantity, times 2, so on and so forth, create, insert. That's great. So now we go to preview, we say I'm going to order 23 of these at $23, $529, press next, and your total order is $529. Now let's say someone says, actually, do you know what, we forgot to add GST to this, this total. So we have to go back to our rules, we'll come to here, and we have to go to our formula, and we have to say, okay, when we do that calculation, we need to say, okay, that's this, and we need to have that times 1.1 and update. Okay, update the rule, we go to preview. Okay, we're going to have 10 of these at $10 each, 110. So it's got our GST, we press next, and it's still $100 on the second page. That's because our rules are still using a formula. Yes, a formula with functions in it. And this is a single use. Whereas my label over here is using a variable. So then my variable I have to update. And I say this has to be times by 1.1. And I can put a bracket around that as well. Let's go here, put a bracket here. Alright, now they're up to date. And we go preview, 10, whoops, and 10, 110, next page, 110. Perfect. And someone says, the government comes in and says, actually, we're going to get rid of GST. That'd be fantastic, wouldn't it? So we go back to here and we have to change this again. We change this to just to 1.0. Again, we've got the same problem. We've got two things out of date, and you've got to figure out where your logic is. Charge $10 for 10 of these items, 100. This is 100, still 110. You go, this is a bit of a pain in the bum. What can we do? Well, we know we've got this thing called a variable. Now, a variable is reusable, whereas the function is not reusable. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this. We're going to scrap the formula. We don't need it anymore. We're just going to use our reusable variable. Now, as you can see here, I've got the wrong data type in here. So we probably could change this actually. So we'll go edit. We're going to copy this. We're going to go around. So we could actually just make that. We'll cut that out. Cancel. Go total as decimal. Paste that in there, and it's 1.1. We'll just actually the government was going to get rid of GST, so let's go with that. Total is decimal. Go on and create, insert that, and he's going to get his value there. That's fine. But what about our label, which would be wanting text? He can't, so we want to use the same one. Order as total. Now we can actually come into here and we can reuse this one inside this one, and we can say, well, that calculation is now order, what was it called? A total is decimal. Total as decimal. So now we're actually reusing things. So we can update that in one place and everywhere it gets updated. Pretty handy. Now you can do a bunch of different ways really, but basically total is decimal is always going to be the single source of truth. All we're really doing with that second variable is either being text, or if you want the decimal's here. If you want it as text, we're going to convert this to text as well for labels. But what this means is this centrally managing. If we need to adjust, the government's decided, the government's changed its mind again, it's going to put it up to 1.2 GST. Good on them. Now we go back to preview. So if I say 10 of those at $10, 120, order confirmation, it's broken. What have I done here? Let's go to here. We forgot to put our variable in. So we need our order total. We're going to add that. Go back again. Go back to our example. 10 times 10, 120, 120. Same thing. Go back to the variable. The government has changed it to, let's say, 0.8. It'll give me back money. Update and go to preview. 10 times 10, 80. Got a discount, and it's 80 here. So as you can see, if you use a formula, it's single use only, and if you need to reuse that piece of information, you can't. So then you'd ask, well, why have formulas? I can't reuse them. Well, actually they are good in certain circumstances, because what happens if everything's a variable in here? You could have 10, 50, I've actually seen customers with 2,000 variables, and those 2,000 variables go across to workflow, and they've got 2,000 variables over there, and quite often they only need to use it once. So let's, as an example, let's say when I first log in, I want to show the person's name, text short. Don't need to use that name ever again. First name, just want to see their first name. So I don't want to pass that to workflow. They already know what my name is because I submitted the form in a context variable and those sort of things. But I do want to just give them that sense of, I know who they are, we've got your order, those sort of things. So rather than having a variable, let's just do a formula that's single use. So we're going to use a profile lookup. And if you're not familiar with this function, I've got a video that explains this. And we say current user email, and we go and get their first name. Now again, formulas, single use, variables, multi-use. So click and insert, we've got our default value there, and if we go publish and we go across to our form and refresh, what do we get? There we go, so it populates my first name. I don't want to reuse that anywhere. I only want to use it once, and I don't want it cluttering up my variables, because as I said, some customers have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, lots and lots of them, and those just keep going through the workflow. So sometimes you want a variable, sometimes you just want a single piece of logic. So that's why we have formulas and variables. And so each of those use functions. So I hope that's helpful to you. If that's still not clear, certainly send me a comment in the chat below, but certainly let me know. Now, I will close and just say that this logic area is accessible in many different places, so I'd recommend that you have a play and learn more, be curious, and ask about any functions you're not familiar with. I'm certainly more than happy to do some more videos. Hope that's helpful to you. Let me know in the comments. Cheers.